Alright, everyone. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're digging in on the Squid Game. So, this is interesting to break down because when you break it down psychologically, it'll have less of an impact on you and you'll be able to disassociate yourself from the way in which it makes you feel, and you can get some hints as to what others are thinking and how that contributes to the zeitgeist, the sort of global consciousness, what human minds are capable of artistically, and the subliminal things that they put in it inherently, right? Salam Edat. Okay, so in episode 2, it's titled Hell, right? Assalamu alaikum, Abdullah. So, as I noted before, the characters that have the triangles on their face masks, they're the ones who hold the weapons. And also, further, the one who is in the center, the square, he's the one who does all the talking. And he'll be in the center, and then everyone else will be around him, which is quite interesting. And so, all the soldiers have their voices disguised as well. And it's important that the characters, soldiers essentially, not reveal who they are, what their agenda is. They can't give any clues, nothing about personal identity, nothing like that. Assalamu alaikum, Ashley. Salam, Son Altesse Serenissim. Okay, so the players have finished the first game, red light, green light, right? And the women are the ones who start to beg and prostrate. I found this really interesting because the female characters immediately get on the ground. They start begging the soldiers, we don't want to play this game anymore, stuff like that. And then the men see it and then they start doing it as well. So this sort of begging scene is, something that would make you feel a little uneasy, right? But again, I think it touches on South Korean culture. Um, like they allow men maybe to beg in that way when I think in other cultures they don't. But still, the women prostrating at this moment to the soldiers to get out of trying to play the rest of the games is powerful because they realize what they've gotten into. But if you remember, they signed the contract in the game, and so it's really important. And notice here, the square soldier says this to the players: if you just follow the rules, you can leave this place safely. Now, we all know, if you've seen it, no. No one is leaving that area. But think about what the soldier says. If you just follow the rules, right? And what were the rules? You can't stop playing. You can't just quit. You have to have a vote where all the players, the majority, agree to finally quit. So if you quit without the group consent, one of the soldiers gets to execute you. And I found that to be kind of like cold and calculated because the soldier is doing this kind of mind game at the same time where it's like, just follow the rules and you can leave safely. And meanwhile, they're in a game. They're in a game that people die. So it's like, what are you talking about? And if you followed it, spoiler alert, but now it is clear only one is going to make it out of all those players. So no one's going to make it out safely. Their body may be transferred out of the facility off of the island safely, but they're not going to be able to leave the island safely. They're going to leave in a box. You know what I'm saying? So it is quite dystopian. Now, the main character's number is 456, and he's the first one to be called to vote if they should stop playing, right? Which is quite interesting. Further, they get dropped off undressed, yet when they were placed to play, they woke up dressed and woke up in a bed versus, on the street. So, what I mean by that there in my notes is that they wake up in their uniforms, right? Now, when they do vote to leave the island, to stop playing the game, they are dropped off in the street in their undies, on the ground, right? It's very uncomfortable and very degrading. They didn't put their original clothes back on the players. And I thought, like, well, that's kind of cruel, but it kind of lets them know, like, hey, if you're going to quit playing the game, you're going to be punished. And some of my other notes is that the main character tries to, convince the officers, but they don't really believe him. So he goes to the police officers, right? And he's telling them, hey, this happened to me. I went on this island. They play these games, and, the officers just looking at him like, you're absolutely crazy. So what's brilliant about that part is that the wealthy people who paid for this island, who paid to watch these players play, they made the game so ridiculous and so deadly that if an officer were to hear it, they'd be like, this obviously isn't real, this person is delusional. But further, what's interesting is that as the characters tell what happened to them, that they agreed, Assalamu alaikum Adan Abdullah, is that they look more ridiculous because the officer asks the player, hey, if you agreed to play this game, then you have no reason to complain, right? And you consented, so it's not really illegal. But already, it looks ridiculous, right? The main character goes there and is like, hey, I went to this island, and I agreed to play these games. We played child's games, they executed some. It was red light, green light, which is a kid's game. And I told them I didn't want to play, and they took me off the island, and they dropped me in the street. And they had all this money that they were going to pay me, right? And the cop's like, this is ridiculous, right? So it's interesting how the writers of the show, as well as, the characters within it, they were very clever in how they wrote it, delivered it, and really made you as a viewer see how any rational cop would most likely not believe what he's being told, right? So it is quite interesting. Now, the other point here was, no matter how it's described, consent is applied, plus the element of the money makes him seem slimy. So for there, it's like, the officers are, the consent, you agreed to play this game, and now you came to law enforcement, what's going on with you? And the money element has a little bit of, you're in debt, you went to play this game, and now you are whining, you want to get out of it. I don't really see how this is bad. And then the amount of money being placed in a piggy bank above him, it's like, what kind of officer is going to believe that, And then the officer goes, and they just let you leave? He's like, yeah, and they just let us leave. And the other point was, and since the games are kid games and it ends with death, cops can't believe him. Exactly. They assume he is nuts, so those who set up the game, rules, and ends really did well. Like I said before, reviewing my notes, is that no matter how the players frame it to law enforcement, there's nothing that can be done. Remember, they got in the van, they're picked up, the gas turns on, they wake up inside of the place, they have no idea how they got there, that they went on a boat, nothing, because they were put to sleep. So, on their way out, they're also done that as well. So they don't have anything to give the officers, right? So, the wealthy people that set up the game covered their tracks. They really made it so that, those who got out of it well, they're gonna have a hard time getting anyone to believe them. Okay? It's just brilliant. And further, there's this really touching scene where Sungwoo, who is the second main character, he's looking at his mom and her fish stand, and this scene really kind of gets us to connect with the like pain in the character. You get to see how his mother is this really good woman. She's really done well with her son. She works hard, and they're a poor family. And her son made it out, went to a good school, and now, he's contemplating going back to that game, and it's really dystopian. And again, they mention this often in the game. In the series, SNU, business school. That Sungwoo went to this business school. He was raised in this poor neighborhood. His mother is a poor lady who owns a fish market. She's the only employee there. She's so kind and loving. She always gives free fish to everybody. And she works in the rain. She struggles. And her son got out of the poor village and was able to go to a good business school. So, contrasting that with Sungwoo really screwing up and becoming deeply financially in debt, you see, like, he went to a good school, but he ended up being a complete moron and going, so much into debt. So you're like, wow, his own mother would be shocked. So you feel in that scene the weight on his soul, right? And he's 6 billion won in debt. So her son, the one who she's super proud of, she has no idea that her son is in debt. 6 billion won in debt. So it's like, imagine 50K to a bank. No, he owes 6 billion. Like, that's a lot, right? And if you notice, the theme in this game, yeah, Ida, exactly, billion. I'm well, Muataz Mahmoud. Sup, fam? It's too much money. So remember, you're seeing these characters who are helplessly lost in debt. And they're coming from a traditional Asian culture, right? You see a little bit of South Korean, North Korean, and Chinese, like, honor culture in here. And you see a little bit of the hard work ethic, which makes it even more intriguing because you're like, how do they look at debt? And how do they rate manhood and your son being part of it? It's really quite deep, right? So he bet futures and speculation. And Sungyo, the main character, says, like, you bet your future? You have a girlfriend? And he's like, no, financial futures, right? And so you see how the second character, Sungwoo, is ashamed, right? He's seen a part of this community. His mother's part of his community, but he went to this good school, but he screwed up so bad that he owes billions in debt, right? And he is thinking about going back into, that game arena. He, is out because, remember, they voted to leave the island to stop playing the game. He survived game 1, which is red light, green light. Exactly, Ida, money, right? And you feel the pressure, right? And so further, the main character, Sungyo, his mama is like a tough cookie. I really emphasize the mother is like tougher than the main character, right? The main character, her son is, he seems friendly, but he seems like, someone said, like, apathetic. Like, he seems very kind of like he had too much tofu in his soup. You know what I'm saying? And he can't help himself. He's always seems like he's this the third in command, Exactly. Too much tofu, yeah, It's just like he's friendly. Like, you could totally see yourself with this character. Like, if you ask him to babysit your dog or your cat, you'd be like, yeah, he's safe. But obviously, don't give him your checkbook. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's just not the one you want to ask. So the actor has done a good job. Exactly, Ida. He wasn't responsible. He goes and sees his mom. She's in the hospital. She has diabetes. Her foot is like eaten up, right? I guess when you have diabetes, you can get these things wrong with your feet. My grandfather had a dear friend who his wife had diabetes and she went blind. And I understand that diabetes is a horrible thing to have, and that some people do get their foot amputated. So Sungyo, his mother, is a tough cookie, way tougher than her son. She's in the hospital. He goes to visit her because he gets a call and says like, hey, come here to see your mother. Now, she is telling him, like, where have you been? Right? She's telling her son, where have you been? He's obviously he was at the island, right? He can't just tell her. She's probably not gonna believe him either, because he seems to be somebody who's irresponsible, doesn't keep his word, can't be trusted with money. You know, he's just not the one to ask. And she is walking home with him with her hurt foot, and she's just disappointed completely in her son, right? And she understands how useless her son is. She's also the one who pays their rent. So imagine this. The main character, he's really at the bottom of the barrel. And his mama pays the rent. She seems to be the one who cooks the food. She's the one in the hospital, and she's like, I gotta go home because I can't afford the hospital bills, I can't afford the medication. And, she even criticizes her son for him cutting off their health insurance and then using that money to gamble. So then you get, at that moment, when she tells her son, like, what did you do with the insurance, right? You cut it off. And you realize, like, her own son is such a degenerate gambler that he can't pay the rent, and he lives with his mother in basically her house. Not like he's taking care of his mom. He can't afford the hospital bills for his mother, and it's his fault that they don't have health insurance, and now she's suffering. So you see this mother, the main character, Sung-gyeo's mother, is this strong woman who has just a crappy son. You feel me? It's really quite sad. And that her son would use the insurance for something other than what it's meant for. Okay? And then the other point here is that he cries out like, I'll get you all the money you need. And it's like, you don't believe him as a viewer, right? You don't even believe him like, man, you spent your mother's health insurance money. You can't be trusted to pay the rent. You're a loser, basically, is how you feel with this character. But at the same time, you feel bad for the character because he seems so kind of like tofu filled that you're like, if he had the money, would he actually keep his word? So the way in which the actor has portrayed the character, you feel bad for the character, but at the same time you don't trust the character. And that's what's unique, is that you feel also bad for the mother. Now, moving on to the next scene, the cop character, he goes on a search for his brother, I believe. Now, the cop character is pretty badass guy. I kind of like that character, because he seems like he ain't afraid of nothing, right? And he just seems bold, and the actor is just literally perfect for that role. So he seems, from what I understand, is he's looking for his brother, right? And so the cop character, he goes to his brother's apartment. He finds, now this is pretty cool, right? I still been thinking about what it means. He finds the black box that has a pink ribbon and has the circle, triangle, and square on the card inside of it. Now, he recognizes the card, and also the card that was on the desk when Sung-gyo was talking to the police officers, and they had the business card on the desk. So he's connecting the dots here, that there is a real game, that people are being called to play, and they're disappearing. He seems like someone who really loves his brother. He was on the phone talking to his mom and was like, Mom, I'm trying to find him. He finds out from the landlady that he has not paid the rent for 2 weeks, and she hasn't seen him. So, it appears like he might have been a college student. That's the kind of vibe I got from seeing his tiny apartment. Was like there was books there. He seemed like a college kid. But then later it's like he's not a college kid. But it had that kind of vibe to it, like a dorm room scene. I found that quite intriguing. And so he goes in and he finds it, right? Now, shifting that to the next scene is the female character. She's like the third character, the main one. She's pretty cool. She seems like, I don't know, she has a very like a very deadpan, like coolness. She has a very unique vibe as a character and actor, right? She's not the typical poppy Asian like that we see portrayed in like Chinese cartoons and anime. She's the total opposite. She's almost, I don't want to say emo. I don't want to say, she's definitely not goth. But her persona is something that intrigues you to her. She has almost a mysterious, but she's pretty badass. Her and the cop character are like a total, something those anime girls creep you out on Unrebel. Yeah, you feel me. Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say, right? So she has the opposite of that, right? It's a sad story. Like, she goes to see her brother in the orphanage, and automatically you connect with her. Because remember, she's the chick who bumped into Sungyo when he won the 4 million from the horse races. Exactly, Ida. She seemed real, right? And you get kind of mad at her in the beginning because it's like, oh, if she wouldn't have bumped into him and took that money, he would have had the money to pay those loan sharks who chased him into the bathroom and, tried to put a knife up his nose, right? When Sungyo was in the bathroom getting beat up. But now, in this scene, you feel bad for her, right? You're like, oh, she has a little brother. Apparently, can't find the mama and the dad. I think they're in North Korea and she wants to pay a broker to bring them over. I think that's what was going on. I don't think that her mom and dad were the bad ones. It's that somebody ran off with her money that she was going to use to smuggle them into South Korea, is my understanding. And the little boy, he was sad and he was saying, oh, the other children were saying I'm going to get abandoned here. And as a kid who spent some times in some daycares, I connected with that. Because it's like, I had a good nanny, and then you have the daycares where you just feel like no one loves you. Daycare kids who are like, don't have, like, I didn't have a mom and a dad around, just my old grandparents, and so they put you in a daycare. You almost, like, I really connected with that little boy, because you feel like, now he's stuck there. The character is stuck there. The little boy can't go anywhere, right? It's really interesting. Oh, Unknown Rebel says, I think her parents died, no? Because she said they were thrown into a river. Ah, maybe. Yeah, maybe, yeah. Something about the parents. I didn't get quite clear on that. But the little boy, he's stuck there, and it's really sad. And you feel for him. And now you connect with her as a character of, like, she's on a mission. She wants to get her brother out, and he's a cute little boy, and she's going to try to do something good. And he's looking up to his big sister. See, what's cool about that character is she becomes the big sister, and she doesn't have the typical sister vibe of like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna take my brother out. She doesn't have that vibe. She has a vibe of like, I'm gonna get you out of here and it's gonna be okay. Like, she has very cool, like, Asian lady vibe. Something I've never seen before. So the way it's depicted is very niche, is very new aesthetically. For someone like me who's consumed a lot of media, I'm sure you felt a similar angle with that as well, right? And so, you feel bad for him. And now, the detective is, is also an interesting character as well. Like, back to that cop, right? And so, remember, Sung-kyo is the main character. Now, on to the next scene. Unknown Rebel says she is kind of like Mikasa from Attack on Titans. I haven't seen that. Salam Ergo 19. So Ali, now he's the next character. Now this was a cool character because I couldn't tell if he was Hindu or Muslim. I thought he was Hindu. I don't know. His wife looked like a Hindu. I don't know. Maybe they're Muslims from India, but the way she was dressed, I thought she was Hindu, and the way he was moving, and the way he bowed with his hands, he looked very Hinduish. So I was like, hmm. So maybe that's up to you to decide. One person said he was Muslim. The other one said she's Indian, a Hindu lady. So I'll leave that to you. But the way he talks, the way he acts, is the mannerisms of a Hindu, right? So that's why I was like, hmm. Now Ali wants his wages, and his boss is a South Korean, apparently. Not Chinese, I think. South Korean. Basically Asian, right? And Ali holds up his fingers. He's got some fingers missing. So basically, he wants his money. He's shown that he's lost body parts working for this terrible boss. So clearly, you see that Ali is a soft guy, happy disposition. He's humble. He cares a lot. He's a hard worker, and he's very polite, and he wants his money for what he's working. So in this scene, you feel like what's it like for an immigrant worker to work in an Asian country where the labor rights are very different. And the boss, he seems really slimy, right? He's exactly like the kind of person you think would own a sweatshop, who would be the kind of cruel Asian boss who's grimy, doesn't want to pay, right? You feel it. And he looks like he hires non-Asians to work in his factories, right? And so you can see that, he's abusing the undocumented immigrants, the kind of underclass, right, in their society. And so as Ali is asking for his money, the owner's playing computer games. But what's interesting about that scene is he's playing card games. So you're like, huh, this owner, he keeps saying like, oh, I'm in pain, I don't have the money to pay you, but yet he has kind of like a nice suit on, you know. And then the owner says like, ask anybody, I haven't paid them their wages. And Ali is being like, give me my money, sir, give me my money, sir. And like, you feel like, this guy seems to have, you know, nearly slave labor for his work, right? He's really starving his workers out. They're losing fingers. They don't have workman's comp. They don't have a union. They don't have like a standardized paycheck. It's a completely different type of work environment, different type of work relationship. So that builds up into how we see Ali as a character within the series. Is you're rooting for him. He's a hard worker. He's got grit. And remember, Ali helped Sungyeol from getting shot from the red light green light competition. Remember, Sungyeol is falling forward. Ali grabs his collar, holds him up to hold still because remember in red light green light, if you move, you get executed by the robot creepy doll, right? It has these laser eyes that detects movement, and if you move, you get a bullet in you, and there's also weapons on the walls, and they're gonna get you too. So Ali, he saved Sungyeol from being executed in the first round, and he here is trying to get his money from his boss. So you feel the compassion for him, right? Now, the owner has an envelope of money on the table. An envelope, and it's like a thick stack, family. Like, there's some cash in that envelope, right? And so, now, it's full circle for us as viewers. This boss is a grimy dude who has money but doesn't want to pay his workers. Total slime ball, right? You ain't got no sympathy for that boss. And now, they've moved you into feeling bad for Ali, right? So now Ali fights his owner, and the owner gets what he deserves. You know what I'm saying? He gets his fingers. There's these rollers, and they get, and the finger like and you're like that's what you get. But what's cool about that is Ali lost some fingers, and now the owner has lost some as well. But think also about the symbology there of when you give money open-handed, closed-fisted. Either way, the hand giving out money, now his hand has been damaged forever because he was stingy withheld money from giving it to Ali. Yeah, that was brutal, right, Rebel? I don't know, I love that part. I was like, that's right. Now go play your computer games. Like, you're just a slimeball boss. Because I think all of us would hate to have to grovel for our wages, right? So thank Allah that in real life, we don't have to grovel for our bosses. Yeah, exactly, Ida. He was a proper slimeball, exactly. So then Ali takes the money, he runs, and hey, he gets out, right? Um, it's really interesting because he escapes, and you're like, go, 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 like totally there. Hello, Sahih Luke, assalamu alaikum. And so now, uh, we're at the very other cool scene. Just let me drink some water real quick. I mean, it's just fantastic the way in which they have built up the characters for us so that we see why they're there. Remember, these scenes help us to recognize what's going on with these characters, why are they there, who are they, and this allows us to connect with them as viewers so that we are kind of seeing who we want to root for, right? Okay. Now, the same female character, the one we were talking about earlier, whose brother's in the orphanage, she's talking to this guy about a broker who, he's the same, like, he's a scammy dude as well. So, what's cool about these two scenes, they go back to back, but both of them deal with scammy people who take people's money and don't do what they say they're gonna do, right? She's totally cool though, is that she tosses hot coffee on him, he gets burned, and Squid Game makes murder and killing a minor sins. I don't think it's about sins in this game though. It's about finance. It's about like suffering, what people will do for money. I don't think religion is the angle here. All the characters understand that death is something to be mourned. I don't think the sinning concept is something they're not using a religious aspect, I'd argue, in this series. So now she takes a knife, she threatens the dude, she tosses, the hot coffee on him, and she's pretty brave, right? Because he's a man. Now he's a wimpy dude, but he's still a man, could be stronger than her. But we've seen her character be totally brave. She ain't afraid of men. She'll take a beating because remember, uh, she was beaten up by that scammer dude, the thug guy, the gangster dude, and nobody helped her. Remember in episode 1, nobody helped her. She knows how to take a beating, and she knows how to look mean people in the face without looking away, right? So it's quite interesting. So she tosses that, and she needs essentially 40 million. Basically, you hear in that conversation that she has with that dude, 40 mil. Now remember, Songwoo, he's in debt 6 million, right? And that's the second main character. Ali needs his wages. He needs money, right? Now, this third character, the female, she needs 40 million. And you're like, wow, we're talking about big numbers here. So I think the reason why in the game they use big numbers so that we kind of feel more of the pressure, right? We ourselves, somebody owes somebody $20 here, $5 there. It's definitely not the same, right? This is something deep, something way more heavy on the soul. And it's just hilarious that she kind of goes on to him. And I liked that scene very much because you're just like, yeah, you go, girl. You get him. Now, remember, Sungwoo's fish store, right? The mama of Sungwoo, who's the second character, the dude with the glasses, the one who told about how you can quit the game, his mama is on the phone with him and they're talking. Now, she's so well-mannered, like traditional Asian lady mama mannered, right? She's got that very, like, loving mama vibe. She is working while it's raining, and she thinks her son, Songwoo, is in America. She has no idea yet that her son's in trouble with the law, that he's billions of dollars in debt, that, he owes people money, they come in for him. Now she calls him on the phone. He's actually in the area and says like, "Don't bring me anything of America from America. Don't waste money." So at that moment, you see how his mom is very frugal. She's very, caring. She doesn't want her son to spend money. She seems to be very moderate in her spending. So she's very concerned with not wasting money. So you get the kind of Asian vibe there of uh, taking care of your finances. It was very cool. Now the second character, oh yes, Cho Sung Woo. Um, there's a scene where he's drinking in the bathtub with his suit on, and you feel that as you watch him. You feel how like, he is totally depressed, right? He knows his mom is a good mom, and he is regretting how he's gonna bring shame to his community. He's gonna lose his reputation. He went to a good school. He was this hero. His mother is a kind-hearted woman. Remember, he leveraged her business and her house, fam. So if he can't come up with the money to pay who he has to pay, his mama is gonna lose her business. A known rebel says, "I was expecting her to die of heart attack, but Sung Gi-yeon did great in the end." Yeah, right? Exactly. And so when he's drinking in the tub, you feel for him like, man, if you're gonna drink alcohol in a bathtub filled with water and a suit on, and he had this interesting incense, he's just like, oh, like you could totally feel how low he feels inside. And somebody knocks on the door, they slide the card under the door, and it tells him, meet June 23rd, midnight, same place as before. And he's dripping water all over his apartment. And doesn't even care of like the mess he's making. He's just totally rock bottom, right? It's really interesting, and you're like, man, from the woman character feeling bad for her brother, Sung-gil feeling bad for his mother's diabetes, Ali wanting his wages, Sung-woo feeling terrible for his mother. You've gotten to see the characters' lowest depressing moments over finances. So it really burns the image into your head how money is something that is so strong, it truly grips you, right? And so then the scene switches to Ali. Now Ali is giving the money to his wife. He tells them, take this money, basically go home, but he doesn't, admit and tell her like what has happened. And she seems very distraught. She seems like a very nice, kind lady. The child looks adorable, very quiet child. So they look like a perfect little family, and he cares so much about his family that he's like, take this money, go, I'll follow you. He just wants them safe. He doesn't tell them, stay here and, risk it with us. No, he tells her to go ahead and to get into a safe area. So you see even more of what kind of person Ali as a character is. When he helped Sung Gi-yo survive, when he politely asked his slimeball boss to give him his money, and now he's trying to make sure his wife and son get somewhere safe. You really start to begin to see his character, and now it's like, wow, he's a pretty cool guy. Now, there's a next scene where Sung Gi-yo is asking his friend for 3 million won in front of his business. Again, he's asking for money. So remember in the first scene, Sung Gi-yo is in the bathroom. He just got beat up. He asked for what was it, like 13,000 or 10,000 won, and the loan sharks are looking at him like the Chinese gangsters are like, really? We just beat you up. You just sold your eye and kidneys, and now you're asking for more money, right? Again, he can't stop asking people for money, and he is always telling them, I'll pay you back. I'm good for it. I'll pay you later. It just is like, gosh, you just want to kind of choke him a bit and be like, stop. going into debt, stop gambling, you know? But he has this addiction to, I'm finally gonna make it, I'm gonna hit the big one, I'm gonna get all this money and pay all my debts, and boom. But then you have a feeling as a viewer of like, you're always gonna get in trouble, right? You're always gonna get in trouble and you're never gonna fix it because it seems like there's something in his personality as a character that constantly makes poor financial decisions, you know? So he has his friend for 3 million won. Now, this is cool because his friend's wife comes out and she's calling her husband inside, like, get inside! You know, it's like mean Asian lady, which is kind of cool because you're like, she seems like she wears the pants in the relationship. I think they were the infamous Yakuza, maybe, right, Unknown Rebel? And it's really cool because it's like the wife is the strong one and she seems stronger than the main character, right? She's like, get away from our business, like vibe. You know what I'm saying? You're like, yeah, she don't want you on her business. She tells Sungyo that it's not polite to smoke outside, you know, and basically telling him to leave. And so what's cool about that part is as a woman, you can imagine if your husband had a friend who was smoking outside asking for money, you would tell your husband, like, can you tell that dude to leave? You should be friends with that guy anymore. So you see a different angle of how people view Sungyo. So you see how his mama views him as somebody who spends the health insurance money. And you also see how his friend's wife views him as well. You see? So you're beginning to see like a full circle character analysis upon the main character, which I thought was very unique. Now, what's trippy is that the old man, he, sits outside the store with Sungyo, and they start drinking and hanging out. But this was really trippy is that I don't know, like, so there's a part of me that feels like, did the old man follow him there? Did the old man just happen to? Because he said, I have a friend who lives by, Sungyo lives by that store. But the old man, remember, he's wealthy. He knows all about the game. He's part of it. And he had a sort of death wish to participate in this game. And so, again, he influences Sungyo to go back. Remember when the old man was signing the contract, Sungyo looked at him, got influenced, did it too. Remember when they were playing the red light, green light game, the old man, he went forward before anybody else, and everybody else got motivated. So you start to see the old man has this, it's so hard not to like him, even though he's a villain. Because if you have deep respect for the elderly, he seems like a very nice guy. Like, it's hard when you find out that he's this diabolical, sadistic, wealthy guy who knows exactly what this game is about. You wonder, like, he's just chilling, eating ramen noodles, and drinking some sake, probably, some alcohol, with one of the players, and he doesn't let him in on anything, or us as a viewer at that moment. Spoiler alert, yeah, sorry, you're gonna get some spoilers. And it's just totally deep there. It's totally like, wow, they did great. And like, the actor is like perfect. He got that soft Asian grandpa look to where you want to like him. And the voice that they use, it's just brilliant. It's like, dang, it's something there, man. But what I thought was cool was that you have a psychopathic type of guy who's an old man, and he smiles in your face nonetheless. That's what's cool about that character. You know what I'm trying to say? It's like, it's utter deception, and you're fooled as a viewer that, like, it was him the whole time. Well, he was part of it the whole time. And his mask is like a creepy mask that you get to see in the end that doesn't really feel like it matches him. But then again, it does. But he did have health problems, and he just wanted to feel again. And you see that he was feeling again when in the red light, green light, he was excited. He had a completely different angle. It's like he had a death wish, but he wanted to go along for the ride. But then remember, there's another scene where when all the players are attacking one another, he stands on the bed and he's totally afraid, and he's, says, "I'm afraid." So you see him and he's so many different aspects. But it's unique further because in Asian culture they have a lot of respect for their elders. In Korean culture, Chinese culture, Japanese culture, you seem to feel like that's another angle that they used, is that the traditional culture of some of those Asian parts of the world, you respect your elders. And he's such a smiling, nice guy that you rooting for him to survive. And when people are mean to him, you feel bad for him before you know who he really is. So it's brilliant the way in which they did that. And I found that just to be totally intriguing. Now, the main character and the old man, they're drinking together. And he tells him that he doesn't want to sit around waiting to die. And I thought that's interesting. Before we know he's rich, right? I don't want to sit around waiting to die because he has some type of brain tumor. And I just thought about how old people have this feeling of, some people don't want to retire, so they want to travel, they want to start a hobby, they want to get up and move. They don't just want to sit in an old folks' home and die. And so he has this health problem and he wants to go on surviving. And you're like, wow, that's pretty badass. And so the old man says, out here, the torture is worse. Now, that's interesting because we saw all the characters, a glimpse into their personal lives, and we see how they struggle, and we see how they are doing their best to survive, but they are going through a difficult time. But it's a line that's delivered in a way in which you begin to see it differently when you know the outcome versus how you don't know the outcome. You see, hey, those people die in that game, but there's a chance at money. Now, if they're in the outside world, they have no chance of money and they're going to die. So it's like the money factor comes in so heavily that you begin to like look at it and wonder, what's going on here? And it's weirder when you know that the old man is wealthy. You think, why doesn't he just go vacation? Why doesn't he just do this or that? But again, he's like mentioned how, when a rich man who has all this money, he's still bored and unsatisfied and unhappy. So he had to do this daring, weird, deathish thing in order to feel alive again. So you begin to see more and more of the character, the old man character that is, and you begin to say like, wow, it's quite intense. So that character within the Squid Game series is brilliant. Now, another theme here is organ payments. A lot of people have said that, people will start to sell organs. It's been a joke that if you go to Brazil, you have to be careful what hostel you sleep in because someone's going to take your kidneys. Others have argued that that's why China has some concentration camps, is because the rich population can't get the organs they need fast enough, and that they want to have some type of slave class that they can harvest organs from. So systematically throughout this whole series, organs are sold to pay off debt. That is something very apparent that I think is so potent to really think about. Like, Ida says, at that point I was thinking if only he found Islam. Interesting. The old man character? Maybe. So, it's just insane. Now, there's another character who I really hated. He is the criminal guy who jacked a casino. He gets betrayed, he's in the car, he's surrounded by enemies, and it said he killed a character called Young Soo somebody. He jumps off the bridge to escape and goes into the water. He's the jerk one. He's an Asian gangster. He's just a jerk. He's so mean. Like, he just is a backstabby, slimy, grimy dude. And, like, you just totally hate him. He's just an awful character, right? You're totally, spoiler alert, he ain't the one who gets the money in the end, but you're happy he doesn't get the money in the end. He was literally the only character I did not feel bad for. I felt more bad for the old man than the gangster dude. Edot says, yeah, because then he would understand the meaning of life and all of this wouldn't have happened. Interesting. Unknown Rebel says, I hate to say it, but he was my favorite character. For real? No way! You like that character? Oh, you like the gangster dude? He was so, like, mean, but I feel you. You like him? That's interesting. So now, after he jumps off into the water, which, you jump off a bridge into some water, you ready to escape. But he had a plan to jack the island's people piggy bank. And you're like thinking, ain't no way you're gonna do that. They have all these weapons. You ain't gonna get to that private island and jack them. The only way out is by ship. Ain't gonna happen. But that we only know that isn't possible when we get to the end of the series. But he was daring, and his enemies caught up with him, so he had to jump off the bridge. But you're like, wow. So now we're at a new scene where Sungyo visit his ex-wife, and he asks her for 2 million won. So he asked his friend for 3 million won. He asks his ex-wife now for 2 million won. When he was beat up, like I said, at the horse track by the Asian gangsters, he asked them for like 10,000 or was it like 13,000 won. Like he's asking everyone for money all the time. And you're like, stop it. It's just freaking stop. Ooh, it's embarrassing. Like, oh my gosh. We're not talking about like $20 to buy a sandwich, right? He's asking for millions. Like, what the heck? So you're like, ooh, and your ex-wife, like usually nobody asks money from their ex-wife. Especially if they've been remarried, right? It's just insane. He's like got no dignity left, that guy. It says, I only liked it when he said, welcome to Korea. Sam says, sounds like a cool show. And so then, he tells his wife, his ex-wife rather, I will pay it back. And then he goes on, and then in the scene, there's a family portrait on the wall that's kind of cringe, yet kind of creepy, yet kind of like, oh, because it's his ex-wife, her new husband, their daughter, and then their new child. And they're all like happy in the picture, right? It's a very tiny living space, by the way. And it just seems like it's a huge picture, like my family never would do something like that, but the families that put those kind of portraits on the wall, gotta say it's a little bit creepy. Unknown Rebel says his ex-wife husband gave him money, but he slapped him. Yeah, I'm gonna get to that, fam. And so, as he's in there, he says, how can you call him her dad? So Sungyo is upset that his ex-wife is calling the stepfather the dad instead of him. And then it reveals how he wasn't there at the birthing delivery. And, hold on, what? Sam says, I've been hearing about this for a while. It's time to find out just what this Green Gate truly is. And so, he was at a workers' protest. Apparently, people had their lives ended. He saw one of his co-workers pass away. It was traumatizing. But I guess at that time, that's exactly when his ex-wife, then wife, was going to the hospital to deliver the baby. And apparently there was a complication in the pregnancy. So he kind of needed to be there, but he kind of couldn't be there. And I guess that is what led to their divorce. He wasn't there when she needed him, even if it was for a legitimate reason. And it's just kind of creepy, yet sad at the same time. And then again he says, I swear I'll pay it back. Again, I will pay it back, he says. I swear I'll pay it back. He's always telling people, I'm good for it, I'll pay you back. It's like, you hear that phrase out of his mouth more than you hear good morning or something else, right? And his daughter's name is Gai Young. And she's adorable. And she kind of pities her father in a way. She loves her dad, but I feel like she can tell like her dad's a loser, And she sees him slap the stepdad outside in the rain after he offers him money to stay away from the family. So imagine you're a man, you are already in debt to loan sharks, you went to a creepy island, you survived this death match, your own mother can't afford her medical treatment, she has diabetes, you live with your mom, you're asking your ex-wife for 2 million won, and her husband offers you money out in the rain, but with the condition that you never return. I mean, pretty feeling low, you know? It's pretty low on the totem pole of power, in the totem pole of masculinity. It's really pathetic. But he gets upset naturally and says, "You think money can solve everything?" And embarrassingly enough, his child sees it, and I guess the the new husband, he falls down, and then you look at Sung-gi-yo like, I didn't know he could hit that hard, right? He just seems like a weak dude. But the little finance dweeb with the glasses, he got knocked down too. So it's two nerdy dudes. No, not nerdy. How would you call it? Two soft tofu guys hitting each other like, little pudgy panda bears, and then he knocked out. Like, they're not the two fighters, right? He's not like the cop character or like the female character who are like brave, go right into it, So when he slaps him, you're like, well, he must have been a big wimp if he got slapped by Sung-gi-yo and fell down in the rain. And then I thought weirdly about how all that money got wet in the rain. Like, hey man, is someone gonna pick that money up? It's getting wet. It's 2 million, you know. Yeah, and so then further, the cop finds Sung asking for aid, and he wants to find his brother. So the cop finds Sung-gi-yo and asks him like, "Hey, I want to find my brother. Can you help me?" And Sung-gi-yo refuses in any way, and he has this quote that he says, "Why would you or anyone else think I could be useful to anyone else?" So at that critical moment, Sung-gi-yo acknowledges that he's pretty useless to people, and he can't really help the cop find his brother, even though he has a clue as to where his brother could potentially be. Now, further, all the players, they go and they wait in the same spots. The vans pick them up, the gas turns on, puts them to sleep, the driver wears the mask, and the cop, he follows the van. So what's really cool is that this cop, he follows detective slash cop. He follows the van, and he's really eager. You feel like he wants to know what's going on with these people. And so there was this scene where he's texting his chief, "I can't come in, I'm going on this thing." Like, he knows any time he could discover a crime, something could happen to him, but he goes on brave either way. And he's texting in Korean. I thought that was cool. Like, on the screen, I was like, there's phones that can text in Korean? That, like, makes my head hurt. But it's so weird when you see how, like, another language has phones where they can text. That's so strange, but I thought that was pretty cool for them to show. Because it's weird for me, it's like, oh, only the letters can be in English, or not English, Roman alphabet, right? But there you see, like, it's like their words, which are quite strange looking. And now the cop slides under the car. Pretty bold. Again, this officer takes the initiative. He's definitely forward, right? He has a lot of stealth. He's very brave. Now, the moment where all the drivers, they have to start taking the players out of the car. Before they do that, they scan them, and there's a chip in them. So what's cool about this is that means the players were chipped. They don't even know there's a chip in them. I don't think they know that. And the chip, they have all their information put in it. So they go, they scan them, and there's a chip like over here. And then the cop, he obviously doesn't have a chip because he didn't sign any contract. He wasn't there the first round, so he didn't get implanted with anything. And he ends up taking out the soldier. Now, he switches costumes and then dumps that soldier's body overboard into the ocean. And so I was totally impressed with just the dedication. Number one, he followed the van. He got out, went on the boat, stayed hidden. He went under the car. Then he goes in, pretends to be asleep to be one of the players. He wakes up, chokes that player, puts on his costume, takes his body, dumps it overboard, and he's going for it. He puts on the mask, he goes for it. You're like, wow, he's a pretty brave guy, man. At any moment, he could be figured out. But he just keeps on keeping on. Quite different from the main character, Sung-gyo's behavior. And you're just like, wow. Now, again, the triangles have the guns, I noticed. The squares speak. The circle, they take orders, and they don't speak unless they're spoken to. So the symbols are playing a role. And remember, Sung-gyo's number is 456, and he even tells the old man, who's player number 1, that he was part of the reason why he came back to play. Ali is number 199. And so it's just quite intense how it's just again and again you begin to see how each character is totally on it. Just totally into the zone of we're going into this game. They're heavily in debt and you feel for them. So the strongest characters, I'd say, are the female character, the cop character, and then the Sung-gyo's friend, the wife who yells at him, she seems pretty forward. And Sung-gyo's mother is pretty forward. But Sung-gyo himself is not. So it's very interesting how the different personalities of the characters bounce off yet add to each other. You know what I mean? It's quite an interesting show. So the overall message I get from it is that so far as obviously we know, stay out of debt. Debt is slavery. If you owe someone money, you must pay them as soon as possible and never lend money to somebody who is chronically in debt, right? I like how the Red Coat guys are very disciplined and organized. Yes, Unknown Rebel. Yes, you mean the pink ones, right? They have like the soldiers. Yeah, they are definitely like that. Sister Squid Game is a satanic show. It's best we don't give publicity to our fan base. Shut up. If you don't like it, don't tune into the freaking discussion about it. Okay? Let me see. You're gonna go in timeout. Shut your mouth. We're here to break spells, to explain it, and then that's ironic. Your name is Sharpshooter, but then you're gonna complain about me breaking down the subliminal messaging within it. Come on. Get it together. Get a life. If you don't like what's being talked about, don't comment. Obviously. So, again, what do you think? Now remember, this is also something that people have spoken about, how when you get into a financial debt, you really lose yourself. So what this show does, it shows you that don't go into freaking debt. So college debt is a huge thing. Now, I understand all of those players had debt that they incurred by their own points. It's like their own fault. By gambling, by bad stock speculation, like Sung Woo, remember? He was a finance guy who screwed up and then had to owe money. Right? So you start to see how all the different reasons of how somebody got into debt and how that allowed for them to lose their respect, their honor, their dignity, right? And the whole contrast is, what were they doing in order to get out of debt? And what were they willing to do for money? So again, this is why I've encouraged some of you to don't fall for credentialism and don't go into debt if you can avoid it. Right? If you can avoid it, just do that. Is more honorable than going into debt and turning into a Sungyo who's always having to borrow money, who's always at the whims of other people's charity, right? And you don't want to be around people who are in debt like that because they start looking at you like an ATM. If you notice how um Sungyo is, he's totally in debt, and it's almost like he sees all his loved ones as an ATM. It's really strange. It's really quite strange. So hopefully you can just take some of those lessons, those nuances, and really think about finances of the future, right? There's people going into debt right now in order to buy real estate in the metaverse. Again, think about it. Think about the banking system. I think what the number one takeaway is of this series is think about the banking system. What is the credit economy? What is this interest based economy? And what do you really need? If you are debt free, you are more free than someone who is in debt and spending. And the old man character, he gets us to see how you may have money and you may be a smiling old man, but you can still be a complete psycho. And that a crazy evil person isn't always going to look like a villain, right? It's really quite telling. So many wonderful characters, so many different ways you can analyze it, give commentary on it, and learn from it, right? What's interesting about the theater age is that you can learn a lesson without having to live through it. I find that quite telling, and I hope you do too, is that you can observe how these people act, what they did wrong, what they did right, and if any situation similar to like that arrives in your life, you trust in Allah instead and stay out of those traps, right? It's really quite telling. Really interesting writing, right? Ali Numan says stay out of riba, exactly. So, yeah, very intense. But that's my commentary on that episode 2, in a deep way. And like it if you found it nerdy. And if you are also a theater connoisseur, let me know what you think. Maybe you saw something I didn't see in that episode. Maybe you have more to add to the conversation. Let me know. Exactly. From student loans to credit cards. Exactly, Ali. Alright, so, alhamdulillah, may other people benefit from this analysis, and may we all not allow ourselves to be tricked through propaganda, and not fall for clever marketing scams. Because remember, we're in the holiday season in America, and a lot of people are going into debt right now because of Christmas. So I just want you to think about that. So it's very potent right now for us to discuss finances. People can make things for free for their friends. They can give their labor. There's so many different ways to show people you love them. But right now, people are maxing out their credit cards that they'll be paying off for the next 6 months. I just want you to think about that. So, the organ market, the debt market, materialism, chasing money, making money your god, being vain, being materialistic, worshipping the wealthy when the wealthy were the ones who set up these degenerate games on this island, how that relates to the debauchery of the wealthy that we don't get to see, and how people will pay to watch you suffer. Because remember, in Squid Game, the wealthy are watching the people do this to themselves. They enjoy it. They bet money on it. They drink and have women around as they watch it. So we can't overly romanticize or demonize, right, the wealthy, but if we think that somebody is better just because they're wealthy, the old man character shows us that's not true, right? And what's interesting is the old man character shows us that don't be mean to the elderly, because sometimes those elderly people who you think look poor, they're really not. Because the old man, he is obviously one of the super, 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 super wealthy. But when you would see him You don't expect it because he doesn't dress like it. He doesn't walk with all this smug pride. It's really, really interesting. Shut up, sharpshooter. Okay, now you blocked. You know, now you blocked. And so learn from this, because today people will see you and then try to get you to be materialistic. And if you learn from this, you will then realize that being materialistic is not the way to happiness, right? Ali Numa says they get us enslaved so they buy more yachts. Exactly. So remember, a lot of Hollywood, they drop little hints at the strangeness of the really super wealthy, right? We were going to our 9 to 5s. We sometimes forget that money changes people, and the old man character shows you that money does change it. So be careful with how you judge your fellow human for not chasing money, and encourage people to be debt free, and don't take debt so lightly. That is what I get from this series. Number one is that if you're going to allow people to bait you into chasing money, you will do things that are dishonorable, right? We see like men with their fancy pants and shiny shoes pretending that they're the best, and they're not. Exactly, Baberji. Real wealth is good deeds in the hereafter. Exactly. So sometimes it takes a series for us to dissect, to analyze, to see, in order to realize, hey, don't let our peer pressure groups push us into selling ourselves to that materialism, to that vanity, because it'll only allow us to be oppressed, right? Inshallah, right, Ida? And so remember this, fam, because we idolize the rich too much. We do. And we judge other Muslims because they don't invest in stocks, they don't do this, do that. Because remember, Sung Woo was a character who was in the financial market. He screwed up, owed billions. You see what I'm saying? And he was so bad and so in debt that he bet his mother's house and, her store in order to pay those debts. So the characters show you that you can go in debt for all number of reasons, but either way, when the number gets so high, you become desperate. And bankruptcy is not always the easiest way out. And if some wealthy person decides to say, hey, I'll let you do this for the money, will you do it? You know in your heart some people will do it. And that is what this show taps into. It taps into our psychology of, hey, you will do this for money because you are tired of being oppressed by debt. And so this show highlights what kind of arena there'll be in the future, maybe. Because remember, the Aztecs had a ball game where they would sacrifice the winner. As an Italian, the Italians had the Colosseum where rich senators bought elite fighters to fight to the death. We already have examples in history where elites paid to see humans do things that ended in death. So, if that happened in the past, is it really too crazy to think that the degenerate, drug addicted, lust filled, godless elites of today would do the same with us when they have more desires than those in the past? Just look at Epstein's Island, right? Ghislaine Maxwell is on trial. Think about it, right? Again, so we cannot over romanticize the rich. Babar G says, debt makes rich richer and poor poorer. Correct me if I'm wrong, sister. You're right. All money belongs to Allah, says Sam. Yes. Spread it around, give Allah a goodly loan. If you are poor and debt free, you're actually richer than somebody who is in all this debt, right? Debt is not a joke. So this whole series highlights that, and keep your organs, fam. Pretty much, right? All right. I hope you learned something. We have to break this stuff down. It is a series that even small children have been talking about. It's in the ether. It's being discussed. It's running away from it does nothing. Hiding from it does nothing. Breaking it down breaks the spells. It breaks the hold. It really helps us to not let it have a surprise attack upon our consciousness. By breaking it down, we show the spellcasters, hey, we see what you're doing. We see the propaganda. We're going to prep. I see the messaging. You learn through it. Got it. You feel me? Everything can be learned from. The good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, all of it. Okay, fam? So, hopefully you thought this was interesting. Give it a like, give it a comment, and have a good night, fam.